The following featured presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah?
Totally tell me everything.
About what?
About books.
Welcome, everyone, to Totally Tell Me Everything, where my friend Bryn McKinnon and I go over one topic each month, and we tell one thing that we're excited about that topic, one question for each other about that topic, and one thing we want to learn about that topic, and not necessarily in that order. So everyone, please welcome my friend Bryn.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be back.
Yay! And we're here for our third episode about books, as you may have heard.
Yes.
And you know what? We chose this because March is my birthday month, and I got to choose.
Happy birthday, Sarah.
Thank you, Bryn. Now, your birthday month is not till September.
That's correct. So I get to choose then.
So what's fun is our birthdays are pretty much 6 months apart. You know, the half birthday thing.
I love half birthdays.
Me too. Like, I made a big deal about them growing up.
I think it's good. It's nice to have a little kick in halfway through.
Yes, I agree. All right. So books. Now, the reason I chose books is because books were very formative to me growing up. And, you know, you fall in love with certain things. And I definitely fell in love with books growing up. And I think, Bryn, you're the same, right?
I was, yes. I don't know if I would have said, if someone said, what's your thing? I would have said books. But I was always reading something.
Right.
And sometimes multiple things. Yes.
Yeah, that makes it. Yeah, I was always reading too. I don't know if people would ask me what's my thing too. I don't know if I would have said, at a certain point, I think I would have said books, but I always like movies too. I just like, you know, storytelling in all its forms, right?
Exactly. Yes, please. Give it to me.
Exactly. So we have quite a lot of fun things to get into, right? So maybe we should just dive in here.
I think that's a good idea.
All right. So question number 1 that we want to ask each other is, name 3 books throughout our lives that have shaped who we are today, and totally discuss why.
We got to get the totalies in there. Sarah, do you want to go first? Birthday girl.
Okay, yes. It's my birthday month.
Yes.
Sure thing. So we're going to go back and forth and each go, you know, one book each as a round table kind of a thing. And, you know, listeners, as you're listening, think of what books have shaped you growing up, because we want to hear about it.
Can I just also say that question, who has shaped who you are today? I got thrown for a loop by that question, who you are today.
Oh.
Because I was like, who am I today? Oh, yesterday I was one person. Today I'm somebody else. But then I realized, stop overthinking it and just talk about books you liked.
That's so cute. That's why your text was like, oh.
Yes. I was like, I'm going to need like a therapy session just to get ready to write and think about what I'm going to talk about.
Well, hopefully this can be like a therapy session, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
All right. So my first book is going to be Grimm's Fairy Tales.
Ooh.
I know. Okay.
Nice choice.
So each of these
big, sorry, I got to interrupt you. That's a big choice.
It is a big choice, but I have reasons.
Okay. I can't wait. Lay it on me.
Okay. I will. So each of these books, we're going to give kind of a short synopsis, just in case you guys haven't read them. So Grimm's fairy tales, it has those famous tales like Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin, Little Red Cap, which is Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel, and they're in their original versions, which means they're darker and they often don't end quite as happily as the Disney movies that we're used to seeing. And Snow White especially has like a lot of hearts being cut out of animals and things, like, and some stories have like people gouging out eyes. Like, they're really gory. I don't know what they were doing in the Black Forest of Germany back then, but man.
It was gnarly. It was gnarly.
It was gnarly. I love it. Yes. So I had these 2 gigantic books of the original Grimm's fairy tales in my room growing up. And these were books that my parents had given me. And they're really the perfect length for reading a story before bedtime. So like before bed, most nights, my mom would read like one story a night. And as I said, they were surprisingly gruesome for little kids, but we read them, and we had our favorites. The overall favorite being Little One Eye, Little Two Eye, Little Three Eye. Now, Bryn, you have this look on your face like, what is this?
I'm afraid.
So I'm going to actually get into a little synopsis of this story because this is like the one that really sticks out to me. And it's kind of a classic Cinderella-type story. They're sisters. So Little One Eye has one eye in the middle of her forehead. Little Two Eye is the middle sister who has 2 eyes like us. And Little Three Eyes is the older sister and she has 2 eyes plus 1 eye in the middle of her forehead.
Wow.
Yes. And what's funny, and the mom either has 1 eye or 3 eyes. So Little Two Eyes is shunned by her mother and sisters because she is like the normal one and they only give her like the leftovers and scraps to eat. So it's very odd. And they live in this little cottage and Little Two Eyes' job is to tend her goat every day in the fields. Like that's her job. And one day a wise old woman noticed Little Two Eyes crying in the field and gave her a magic phrase to say, or she asked her, hey, why are you crying? And little girl's like, I'm hungry. And so the wise old woman says she gave her a magic phrase to say to her goat. And the phrase was, little goat bleat, little table appear. And food would appear, and the Little Two Eyes could drink and eat her fill. And then she would say, little goat bleat, little table away. And the table would disappear. And so, yeah, so each day she went out to the fields and did this. And eventually the mom and the sisters became aware that, Little Two Eyes was no longer like eating her scraps. And they're like, what is happening? So they became spies, Little Two Eyes and Little One Eye. And I know, and went out to the field with her, and Little Three Eyes saw what she was doing with her 1 eye, because the other 2 eyes were asleep. It's very interesting, but
wow.
So she saw that, Little Two Eyes was getting food from the goat when she would say this phrase. And so she told on her to her mom, and the mom killed the goat.
Ah,
isn't that terrible?
My goodness.
I know. So then the wise woman saw Little Two Eyes crying again in the fields the next day and told Little Two Eyes to bury the goat's heart before the door to the cottage.
Thank you. I would love to do that.
Right. Which she did. And this beautiful tree grew up with leaves of silver and fruit of gold, and only Little Two Eyes could touch it. Whenever Little One Eye or Little Three Eye tried to touch, the branches would like move away. And so, of course, as it does, it happened that a knight came along and said, whoever can break off a branch of the tree for me, I'll give them whatever they want.
What a coincidence.
Yes. And so this happened just like the Cinderella story where the 2 other sisters tried to get the branches and they hid Little Two Eyes away and they couldn't get him, and they couldn't get him, much like the slipper on the foot. So finally Little Two Eyes like made her presence known, and she got the branch for him. And he was like, oh, what would you like? And she asked to be taken away. So he took her away to his castle and they fell in love and got married.
Oh my goodness.
And meanwhile, after a while, 2 poor women came begging one day, and Little Two Eyes realized that they were her sisters, and she took pity on them and allowed them inside, and they forgave each other and stuff.
Oh, wow. Little Two Eyes is a big person.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was like, this is the most interesting story. I don't know why I was so drawn to it. I think my mom did some really good voices and stuff. And there's like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of like actual dialogue in this tale that she would do. And I think I liked the connection to Cinderella as well. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, and it's an interesting sort of twist on Cinderella with the eyes, first of all.
Yes.
Like, how captivating and fascinating when you're used to the other, like, version.
Right. And I think because we have two eyes, we can, like, relate with Little Two Eyes.
Sure. I'm sure that's why they had that particular
Right.
child have the two eyes.
Exactly.
How old, do you remember how old all these girls were supposed to be then?
Oh gosh. I always imagined probably like Little Two Eyes was like 6 or something
okay.
But I'm sure they were old. You know, I imagined them to be the age I was, I think.
Right. Cause just at the end when you said that the knight took her away and then they fell in love, I thought, well, how?
Oh,
was it like 10 years later they fell in love or like,
that's a good question. I don't think I thought it through.
That is okay. Not a problem.
Maybe I did think she was like 16. Who knows? I don't know.
No, and it doesn't matter, right? I mean, when you're a kid, that you're not, it doesn't matter. I don't think even if you thought she was 6, I don't think you thought the 6-year-old was marrying the knight, probably.
Right. Or something. Yeah. I don't know. That's a very good question though, Bryn.
I take us off on kind of weird tangents and
no, it's all good.
That's the first of this episode's weird tangents. Brought to you by Bryn.
I think people love weird tangents though. That's what podcasts are all about, right?
I'm going to go with that. I like it.
Nice. All right. So now we get to the question of why Grimm's fairy tales shaped me. And it's because there's a deep connection to my roots here. And roots, I can't say it right. But anyway, because my mom's maiden name is Grimm.
What?
It's spelled the same way too. Grimm.
Oh, my stars.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would go visit my grandma and grandpa Grimm. You know, they lived in Wisconsin and my great grandparents came over to America from Austria and that Black Forest region in Germany that the Grimm brothers were from.
Wow.
Yeah. So I feel like in our heart, we have never done the actual like back, but I feel like we're related in some way to the Grimm brothers.
Yeah. I mean, for sure.
And as a kid, I absolutely believed that the Grimm brothers were like my great uncles or something.
Oh, that's beautiful. What an amazing connection to feel while you're being read the stories.
Yeah. I thought that was really neat. And so, yeah, so Grimm's fairy tales hold that special place. It's really neat. So that's why it shaped me. And the fact, when your parents read to you at night, that's a big thing too. So those two double features really, really shaped like my connection to my, roots, your past, things like that.
I love it.
Ancestry. That's the name I'm talking about.
There's the word.
Yes. My ancestry.
That's great. Ah, thank you, Sarah. That was nice.
Good. I'm glad. Well, I'm excited though, Bryn, to hear about some of your books.
All right. I'm going to start with my first one. My first one is also something from childhood. My first book is Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Nice.
Little House in the Big Woods is the first book in the series. It's a 9-book series by Laura Ingalls Wilder. The series is about her life as a young girl and growing up in the Midwest as a pioneer family.
Yeah, I think it's even in Wisconsin, if I remember correctly.
Yes, at least the first book, Little House in the Big Woods, is in Wisconsin. They move after Little House in the Big Woods to the Little House in the Prairie book. I mean, Little House in the Prairie house.
Okay.
But I don't remember where they are for Little House in the Prairie because Little House in the Big Woods was always my favorite.
Oh, okay.
So I read all of them, I think, but I really focused on Little House in the Big Woods.
Is this set like in the 1850s, I want to say? Something like that?
1871 is when Little House in the Big Woods is set, and it's when so it's an autobiographical series of Laura's life growing up with her family and becoming a woman eventually and having her own children. But in Little House in the Big Woods, she's 5 years old. She is the younger sister of her sister Mary, and Laura is feisty and Mary is very good.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And it's just all about their lives when the girls are young and having to make their way in this small cabin in the woods of Wisconsin.
Nice.
So it's a fairly simply constructed book. Mm-hmm. But what I loved about it then and what kind of brings me back to it, and I've gone back to it my whole life. I just read it last year to my son's 3rd grade class when the pandemic hit and there was lots of time to fill.
Yeah.
I volunteered to read them a book because I was home and it was easier for me to volunteer than it was before when I had to go to the office every day.
I think that's interesting. Plus, I think there's parts in the book where they're like, there's snowstorms and stuff and they're all stuck inside. So it's very relatable.
Exactly. That's actually why I was inspired to read it to them, because we were all stuck at home with our families the way they were. And there was something about Little House in the Big Woods feels like a cozy book to me. And I was feeling at that time, at least because we were very early in the pandemic, feeling very cozy and hunkered down in sort of a good way, at least fairly good at that point.
Right. You're getting more family time than you kind of bargained for.
Which than we had ever had. Right.
Yeah.
So I love this book for many reasons. One is that it tells this story that I wasn't getting any other place, about this family who lives on their own, doing almost everything for themselves, making everything, living in a place and a climate and a terrain that's wildly different from where I was growing up. So much of it is about them preparing food or preparing things so that they can harvest food, or, it's all of these very daily chores sorts of things. But it's written in such beautiful language and such gorgeous detail that it's really easy to fall in love with the language of it and the style because of the way it was written. Mm. Also, the subject matter is just, sort of idyllic on purpose because the realities, I'm sure, were much harsher.
Right.
And it's a children's book. But my favorite chapters it's sort of, every chapter is about sort of either a particular time or a particular event or a particular task. So my favorite chapters are Christmas. The Christmas chapter is so beautiful. Laura, I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but
no, give us a little brief. Yeah, that's fine.
So, everything that they have to make pretty much. And her father, goes to town every once in a while, but they don't get much stuff. So Laura's only doll is a corn cob that is wrapped in a rag, I think. And she loves it, adores it. Mary has a real doll that was bought from a store. Not a real doll. She has a doll that was purchased from a store.
Right.
And she lets Laura hold it every once in a while, but it's not the same thing. So for Christmas that year, so their cousins come to visit them, which is also just a description of like people coming on the sleigh covered in the bundles of blankets with the baked potatoes stuffed under their feet so they stay warm. And it's just so richly written and with such detail. It's gorgeous. Anyway, the cousins come, so they all spend the night there. All of the other children get like a stick of peppermint and some mittens that their moms knit for them.
Okay. And
Laura gets those things too, but Laura gets one other thing, and it's a store-bought doll, and she's beautiful. So it's just it's very simple, right? But it's just beautiful. There's a whole chapter it's called the sugar snow.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was thinking
the sugar
of this.
snow?
Yeah, go, but please. Okay. I was going to bring it up if you weren't.
Yes, it's so amazing. So, it's wintertime and they're, I guess their grandparents and an uncle or somebody, they don't live that far away. But so those people harvest maple sap, and they make maple syrup and maple sugar. And at one point in that winter, it gets warmer, and then they have another cold snap. And that is the sugar snow, where that extra cold snap means that they're going to have a longer run of the maple sap. So they can make more maple syrup and maple sugar and sell it, I guess, and have more, whatever. It's a big deal. And so Pa goes to help with the sugaring off and all that stuff. And everybody's really excited. And then he brings back it's just thrilling. It's, it's still thrilling to me to read them. So, yeah. And then the only other chapter do you want to talk about sugar snow?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I just remember, like, the main part I remember about that particular moment is the description, cause I think it's the first time Laura has had this. So they have, like, snow in a pan, and they pour the sap on the snow, and it freezes and makes, like, candy.
Yes.
And her description of, like, eating it and stuff, it's like, I've always wanted to try this, like, toffee maple syrup candy.
Yes. We actually almost did it, but we didn't have snow. But so, and I love it, but the description of at her grandpa's house when they get all the sap from the barrels that are attached to the trees, and they pour them into this big vat, and then they sled it over to the house where there's like a huge fire with this giant, huge kettle they're pouring all the sap into. So it's boiling, and the uncle's like standing there stirring it. And it's like so elaborate, and there's so much that goes into it to make it what it needs to be. It's so dramatic and so exciting. And so, yeah, then Pa brings back the syrup. He's got little cakes of sugar for the girls, and he's got a big cake for Ma, and he's got, a big pot of the syrup, and Ma boils it with molasses, I believe. She takes the syrup and she boils it with molasses to make it even more thick. And then the girls get their pan of snow and bring it over, and she pours it on. They make pictures, I think is what, I forget what they call it.
Yeah.
Anyway, she drizzles it on, and then they eat it, and they're only allowed to have one, and then they have to save the rest for Christmas. It's just sweet and, just lovely. And then the only other chapter I'm going to mention in detail is the next one. After the sugar snow, there's dance at Grandpa's. So because there's so much syrup and it's a party time of year, I guess, Grandma and Grandpa decide to have a party and have a dance. And so everybody's coming. I think it's just family, but lots of people come. And just the descriptions of the aunts, she has two aunts who are teenagers maybe, and they are getting ready, and they're doing up their hair and putting on their fine clothes, and everybody's dancing, and the description of the dancing is just gorgeous. At this moment, I want to tell you about why the descriptions of everything and the language is so well done. It's not because of Laura herself. Laura wrote, I guess, the first book, and it was fine, but it wasn't great. But Laura's daughter, Rose, who, if anyone has watched the series Little House on the Prairie, I feel like eventually they get to that point where Laura grows up, she marries Almanzo, and then they have a baby, and the baby's name is Rose. Well, Rose was real, and Rose grew up and became a writer herself, and she's a much better writer than her mother. So Rose, her mom wrote this first book. I guess it was rejected. She couldn't get somebody to publish it. And so Rose took it and started working on it with her and transformed it into what we eventually got, which is beautifully written prose that is not so much autobiographical, but is a very fictionalized version of what happened, but is a much better story.
Okay.
So thank you, Rose.
Yeah.
So, and how I learned about Rose, is that her name is Rose Wilder Lane, and she really should be the one getting credit for the books, making the books into what they eventually became.
Got it.
And there's a great New Yorker article from August of 2009. That's where I read about this first, that I'll put the link to that New Yorker article in the show notes, but it explains more about her life. She was quite a person. She's like a character.
Oh, fun.
And was very talented. So.
And you'll put this in the show notes?
I will.
You have excellent show notes, Bryn. Bryn writes all the show notes, and there's like so many links to things if you want to learn even more.
Thank you. Yeah, I like writing the show notes, and we when we're preparing for the show, thankfully we put a lot of stuff into our notes that we use for talking, which makes it so much easier to do the show notes. So thank you for all your details.
Yes.
So there's two things that how this book has shaped me today, who I am today. Well, there's probably three. One is it was just so beautifully written, and it really ignited that sort of love of language and description that I think has carried me through my life. I also have read it to my kids and really enjoyed sharing that with my kids, and still, maybe not still, but even recently, in recent years, they've let me pull it out and read this Christmas chapter to them around Christmas time, or just occasionally we'll just pop into a chapter, which is great and super fun. So while I was reading it to my kids, I realized that there were a lot of spots where I skipped over actually reading what was written, or if I thought that they could handle it, or if I knew how to handle explaining it to them, I would stop and explain, because there's a lot of racism in this book, which Laura Ingalls Wilder has been called out for, especially recently, in many different ways. So there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of horrible things that Pa and Ma say about Native Americans. There's racist songs that Pa sings about Black Americans. It's just, there's a lot of problematic spots. So, which on the one hand is a great teachable moment.
Right.
You know, we need to have these conversations, and books that are in other ways wonderful and then have spots of difficulty are a great opportunity. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to this book for giving me that opportunity to have these conversations with our kids, because they're really important conversations and we can't shirk them.
Plus, I think it's a relatable way for them to kind of understand that.
I hope so.
A little better. Like, it's one thing to say, by the way, kids, there's racism in the world. It's like, well, you say that, they don't get it. But like, this is an actual, like, example of it.
Right. Especially, you know,
understand.
having white kids who don't witness racism every day in their life necessarily in those sorts of ways. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And so that was an interesting situation that I found myself in last spring when I was reading it to the third graders, because I realized, like I started reading it and then thought, there's all these spots. And I wish that I didn't have the fortitude to use it as a teaching moment in that milieu. Okay. I wasn't comfortable doing it, so I skipped over this stuff.
Right.
You know, I think in hindsight, I probably would have tried to have the conversation with the teacher outside of it and say, how should we handle this?
Right.
I think I didn't, because we were so new to the remote schooling and everything seemed so tentative. I just thought it's easier at this moment. I'm going to take the easier route. Also, I thought, you know, maybe we would have to talk to the parents about it too. I don't even.
Right. You weren't the teacher of the class too. So.
It was a conundrum. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Having these realizations and acting on the realizations has been really good, but it also has made me wonder, should I even still be loving this book? Can I continue to read it now, having more of an understanding and of where it's coming from?
Okay.
And so I did some searching around because I needed someone else to help me figure that out, because I didn't feel like I could make that decision for myself. And I'm still working on that decision. But I did find an excellent article by a writer named Liz Fields on pbs.org. It's an article it's part of the American Masters section of PBS. And the article, which the link to it will be in the show notes, it's called Laura Ingalls Wilder, Prairie to Page, What Should Be Done About Racist Depictions in the Little House Books.
Nice.
And it's a really good article. She interviews Roxane Gay and Linda Sue Park, both of whom are authors and writers. Roxane Gay is Black and Linda Sue Park is Korean American. And they have really good, they detail some of their experiences reading the books, mm-hmm. all of the Little House books in general.
Okay.
And they sort of talk about how banning or censoring the books or like ignoring them doesn't solve the problem of racism at all, or the fact that our country hasn't come to terms with our history about it yet. Mm. And that reading and teaching them within the context of the time, you know,
right.
What were attitudes at the time? What are our attitudes when it was written? because the book was written several decades after Laura was 5, obviously.
Right.
We have to talk about these issues, and this is a good way to go into it. And also, Roxane Gay talks about how she fell in love with the writing of the books in much the same way that I did. And how do you separate that? Like, you can still have loved something and recognize its faults.
Oh, yeah.
So that sort of helped me come to terms a little bit with it. And I'm grateful, even though it's an uncomfortable situation to be in. That's necessary, and that's life, right?
Right.
So
I think that makes sense. I mean, if you look at like 007, James Bond stuff, I mean, there's a lot of problematic stuff to women, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
tons. And yet I still enjoy the movies, you know? It's just one of those things. You have to kind of take it at the time it was made. And similarly, like Disney Plus, you know, has just released The Muppet Show on Disney Plus, and on some of the top of some of those episodes, they have, this episode may contain cultural depictions or stuff that are, you know, not correct, and they were wrong then and they're wrong now, but we're keeping it in its form just to kind of, you know, this is what society was. It's like a time machine.
Yeah, I do like that they put that disclaimer or that sort of note on those things. And yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, people aren't perfect. Society wasn't perfect. We try to strive towards that, and it's something we can all, it's a reminder of how we should keep striving to be, you know, a good society.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Right. Exactly.
So that's how Laura Ingalls Wilder's book, Little House in the Big Woods, shaped who I am today.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad I've read that at some point too. So I had a bit of a context to that.
Sarah, what is your next book?
Okay, so my next book would be Pride and Prejudice. Have you read this one too?
I read it in high school.
Okay.
I don't think I have read it since then, but I have seen a movie or two and I know the gist.
Okay, perfect. Well, in case any of you don't know the gist, I will give a little summary here. This is an 1813 novel written by Jane Austen, and she is English and writes about her contemporary time in 1813, that Regency era of the English society. So the novel follows Elizabeth Bennet and her sister Jane. They are of marriageable age, and they also have 3 younger sisters, which means that at least one of the sisters must marry for money, as their father's house will be entailed away from him once he dies, and they'll all be turned out of the house, and the women don't own anything. So...
Boo.
Right?
Boo.
Right? So this is when a rich Mr. Bingley moves into the country estate next door, and he is a bachelor. And this is where we come upon the very first line of this novel, which is, "It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of good fortune must be in want of a wife." And that's kind of the tone of the whole book. It's very pithy. It's very light, and yet it deals with these themes that are kind of serious here. So, and then Mr. Bingley travels with Mr. Darcy, who is even richer than Mr. Bingley. Somehow the whole English countryside knows that he has 10,000 a year. So, oh my goodness. And so the sisters all attend this welcome ball, and Elizabeth makes this snap judgment of taciturn Mr. Darcy. And throughout the book, you know, he has too much pride to enjoy like a country ball, and she is too prejudiced to change her mind about first, second, maybe even third impressions. And so that's why it's called Pride and Prejudice, because it's like each things they have to work through before they can, you know, love each other. Spoiler.
Yeah, I never knew what the pride and the prejudice, I mean, in general terms, yes, but I didn't realize it correlated to one or the other. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it actually, both of them correlate to both at different points in the novel, but that's like the beginning of it.
Got it.
Yeah. And so the whole novel, it delves into like the manners, etiquette of English society, the importance of marrying for love rather than money or social prestige even. And it just, like, the characters just jump off the page and into my head. That's what I really love about this novel. Like, just her writing is like you say you love the beautiful descriptions in Laura Ingalls series. Well, I love the characterizations in this. And each of these characters just are very fully rounded, even the women and the men, which, you know, a lot of books in that time, you know, men were mainly the focus, you know, Sherlock Holmes, things like that. And the women in here are very, very well developed as well. And also, I actually started reading this novel because I happened to come across BBC's excellent 1995 6-part miniseries starring Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy in his breakout role and Jennifer L. as Elizabeth. And it was just, it's like, if you've seen any movies of Pride and Prejudice, I urge you to watch this BBC miniseries because it's so much more well done than any movie.
All right. I will pick that up.
Yeah. All right. And why it shaped me. So this is a book I read 95. So I was in my early teens when I picked this one up. And this is one that I've read over and over again. I absolutely adore Pride and Prejudice. And Elizabeth, she's the main character, and she's really full of charisma and wit. And she is not afraid to question the rules of the society that she's in. And she taught me kind of to do that, like to not be afraid, to be myself, even if that means I'm kind of out of step with my peers. And by doing so, you kind of attract the exact right people to you. And I think that's an important lesson for any, especially young teenager to learn.
Yeah.
And then also, of course, as a young teen, I love love stories. That's my thing.
As a young teen, I know you now.
Well,
also.
yeah. Okay, that's true. But I think that's true. But I think before you're like with the one you love, you like yearn for that. So it's even more of a longing factor that factors in. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, definitely. I'm just a sucker for romance. And this particular novel is really a perfect love story because it teaches you that you can't just settle for someone just because they look good on paper, right? Similarly, you can't fall head over heels in love with just someone how they look.
Excellent points.
It needs to be these two things, like respect and friendship really need to be the foundation to a lasting partnership. And Elizabeth and Darcy really, like, their relationship is really interesting in this novel because he proposes to her halfway through the novel. But he like says it's despite his better judgment, and I know society will look down on me by taking you who's so much lower than me.
Ugh, he has so much to learn. Such a jerk.
Exactly. And she refuses him because
good on her.
She doesn't feel the same way. And this refusal was the first time someone ever said no to Mr. Darcy. So it made him really look deep and have to like correct the flaws in his own character before he could be worthy of her. And similarly, she had to look past her prejudice, her initial judgment of him, because she learned some things about his character that had to change her mind too. So it's really a fascinating novel in that.
Great. I love it. I now I want to pick it back up again because I don't think I've read it since high school.
Oh, yeah. I would definitely recommend you reading it. And then, of course, there's been many other novels like some, I almost want to say fan fiction that have become, like, they've got them published, actual novels.
Like Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yeah, that one too. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's why it's shaped me in how, you know, I look at relationships.
Very cool. It seems like a great way, yeah, like an education about that very thing where you shouldn't try to fall in love with someone or think you're in love with them just because they're great on paper or like, yeah, or you shouldn't just go head over heels over, oh, you look hot, so right.
I'm going to let you. Like, that's not a basis for a relationship.
Correct.
Maybe the basis for a fun night, but like not your whole life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yay.
All right, Bryn. So do you have a second book that has shaped you?
I do. Book number 2 is The Passion by Jeanette Winterson.
Now, I have not read this, so please, I'm very curious about it.
All right. The Passion is sort of a fairy tale set in a real historical place and time. It is about two main characters, Henri, who is a French soldier during Napoleon's wars, during the Napoleonic Wars, and he is Napoleon's chef when they're out with the army having the war.
Okay.
And then the other character is a woman named Villanelle. She is the red-haired daughter of a Venetian boatman. She has webbed feet.
Oh my.
As apparently the Venetian boatmen are mythologically said to have. Apparently it's rare for a woman to get the webbed feet. Oh. So from the moment we hear that, we know she's different. She's bisexual. She likes to cross-dress and is kind of gender fluid. She's a free thinker and she lives in the moment. She's in Venice at the start of the novel. I think Henri is maybe in Russia. Anyway, it's a story that happens during war and it's very fantastical, magical, kind of dark, has really, really beautiful writing. I believe it was published, I should have looked this up, I believe it was published in the late 80s. Henri and Villanelle's destinies become intertwined and wild things happen.
Oh.
I read this book as part of a class that I took in college. The class was called Women and Men Reading and Writing. And it was one of the best classes I ever took. It was just 14 students and there were 14 novels we were assigned to read. And it was 7 pairs of novels. Each pair was a similar type of novel about a similar subject matter, but one would be written by a man and the other would be written by a woman.
Oh, that's fascinating.
We read them at the same time. So an example of that is we read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Wow.
And then we would come to class and talk about the books separately and together. And it was a great, great class. I wish I had the reading list. I don't have the reading list anymore, but The Passion was one of the books we read. Nice. I don't remember the other book, but so this is the one written by a woman.
I was wondered, like, which book was it paired with? But that's.
I know. I reached out to a friend from college who was in the class also, and he didn't remember what the other book was. Ah. But it's really beautiful. It's really very much like an adult fairy tale with a lot of darkness, like the Grimm stuff.
Yeah. But
also sort of historical. It's very good. Okay, so why it shaped me is lots of things. I was an English major in college, and I took a lot of reading and writing classes, and I took a lot of poetry classes.
Ooh.
And during the same year that I took this, which was my senior year, I took a poetry class where we learned about different poetry forms. So not just sort of free form poetry, but, things that have set rhyme schemes or set stanzas or whatever.
Like haikus are so weird.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. So one of the forms that we learned was the Villanelle, which is the name of the main character, one of the main characters. And a villanelle is a poetic form that consists of 6 stanzas that are in a set rhyme scheme. And there's 2 lines in each stanza that repeat. Mm. And so it's pretty complicated to write. It's very effective when you read them. I think the most famous one is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas.
Okay.
I will put the link to that poem in the show notes.
Okay. Is it long or can you read it? It's kind of long.
I mean, it's 6 stanzas. It's not that long. You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Sorry, hold on. There's one more line.
No worries.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So this was written when his father was dying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But you'll see, hopefully I read it well enough that you can tell, that the first stanza has 3 lines. The first line of that stanza and the third line of that stanza become the final line of alternating stanzas.
Yes. Okay.
And then the 6th stanza is 2 unique lines, and then those 2 lines after that.
Okay.
So it's sort of complicated. It's very fun. I think it's a very cool way to get your thoughts out.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, it's the name of one of the main characters, and what I realized while I was reading the book, because I had already learned about Villanelle, the poetry form, was that the writer put lines repeating in different places in the novel.
Wow.
And I immediately was like, and I still, for a while, I might not still have it, but I had my copy of it and I looked and there, like, you can tell where I'm like tagging things like, oh, Villanelle, repeating line. 'Cause I write in books. I don't know if that's bad, but I do.
No, it's not bad.
So I found that so intriguing and thrilling and exciting.
That you had unlocked the author's idea.
Yeah. And I was so grateful that I had learned what a villanelle was before I read this book. Mm-hmm. It's also such a tragic, romantic, fantastical piece of beauty, this book. It's very tragic, which I think I loved at the time. I'm not sure I'm so into the tragic now, but as a, older teenager or young 20s person, I would just captivated.
Right.
The other thing is that, back to Villanelle just for a moment. I don't know. Have you ever watched any of Killing Eve, the television show?
No, I've not.
Okay. So one of the main characters in that is also named Villanelle. And I've only seen a couple of episodes. It's very good. I just never got through it. Anyway, Villanelle, and I think it has to do with the poem as well, or poetry form. So this novel introduced me to gender fluidity, which I had never experienced before. And I'm not even sure, I don't think that those words were actually used, but it was the notion of a person who wasn't strictly considering themselves male or female and had this fluidity between it. And it was beautiful and felt really
natural.
It just opened me up. Yeah. Really natural. Felt, it just opened me up to oh, yes. Fantastic. Great. I love it. And so it was like another step toward kind of opening me up to the world outside of the world I had been raised in and the culture I'd been raised in.
Right.
And it's just so beautifully written. It was at a time in my life when I was completely in love with words and books, and like everything seemed possible. All things were open to me. So that's it.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's really interesting when you are, you've brought up a certain way and something comes along and like shifts your focus or I think that's kind of important times in your life. So I can see why you have chosen this book.
Yeah. And that's not to say that Catholic people wouldn't be open to gender fluidity and maybe. Yeah.
Well, I was raised Catholic as well. So similarly.
That's right.
Yeah. And in college, I kind of fell in with the Lutherans and kind of learned about how different that was. And, there's certain things.
Interesting.
It's just good to like experience different things and figure out what you like.
Yes. Yes.
So it makes sense.
Yes. Yes.
And you read that book at a certain time in your life when you were open to new ideas and different possibilities.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, what's your third book?
My third book is Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. And this is Star Wars novel. And it's actually the first Star Wars novel. I mean, not technically, but I'll explain. So during the dark times of Star Wars, where there was no movies, no toys, this was 1991, all of a sudden the saga continued in books. And
yay, books.
Right? So 1991, this first book of the Thrawn trilogy came out, Heir to the Empire. I had just seen Star Wars for the first time at 10 years old, and I had fallen in love with the movies. So when I saw this title in my local library, I freaked out. So it just came at like this perfect time for me because, you know, most people older than me had seen and fallen in love with Star Wars in film, and, you know, maybe their Star Wars was waning or whatever. But like for me, it was like perfect. I was into the movie. Bam. Here's a book set 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Like, here you go. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to go into just a little summary here. In this book, it's set 5 years after Return of the Jedi. The Imperials are divided. They're maybe only a quarter as strong as they were. Leia and Han are married, and Leia is pregnant with the twins, Jason and Jaina. So that was exciting to me because Han and Leia were always my romance.
Yeah.
And both are working for the New Republic. Luke is planning a Jedi training academy, but the Imperial remnant is slowly amassing under one man, Grand Admiral Thrawn. And he is a huge threat because he is super intelligent. He's a master strategist. And throughout these novels, he uses his knowledge of Leia, Luke, and the leaders of the New Republic and some secrets. He uses it against them in this epic struggle for power. So it's really cool. It's really amazing.
Yay. I have not read Heir to the Empire, but I have read a Thrawn book, at least one Thrawn book, but isn't it terrible that I don't remember which one it was? It might have been one of the newer ones.
It's the new, okay, because recently the same author, Timothy Zahn, has written these Thrawn novels, which are actually precursors to, so it's like Thrawn in his developing years.
Okay. Yeah, this one, Anakin was in this one that I read.
Okay, yeah. Yeah,
it was really good. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, that was his developing years before all of this, this Heir to the Empire stuff. Yeah, prequels. There you go.
Got it. Yes.
Yeah. So the reason this book and this trilogy really shaped me was, as mentioned before, I've always loved books, always been reading books, always had a book at night, that I was reading before I went to bed. And I've always loved movies. And now there was this book that continued the story of a movie that I loved. Like, this was so awesome. And I just remember that it just unlocked my imagination in this new way, because I can vividly remember visualizing the very first scene in the book is Leia trying to reach out and turn off her room light using the Force, right? So I can imagine her at her bedside. She's trying and it doesn't work for her, poor thing.
Oh,
I know. But and then I visualized Luke and his training and Mara Jade, or Thrawn in his room of historical artwork. So all of these were just movie images to me in my head. It was amazing.
I love, especially recently, there's been a lot of discussion in Star Wars fandom and such about how people don't have to become Star Wars fans because of the original trilogy, right? It should be, anyone can become a fan in any way of consuming Star Wars. And this, granted, you did see the original trilogy before you started reading these books, but it seems like reading the books really made it blossom for you, which I love. And same thing with one of my kids is a Star Wars fan, and really he is a Star Wars fan because of the animated series, not because of the films. Neither of my kids really like the original trilogy much at all, and I'm fine with that. So I love that books could, and I know this is true for so many people, the books are what sort of really built your fandom and your love of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely, this trilogy really began that series of Star Wars novels that was published through the 90s. And I kept up with them through 1999. Every time they were released, I would read every single one. And like you said, it definitely kept my Star Wars fandom alive through The Phantom Menace. But one of these things about the books is because of these books, you read a book alone, right? You're in your head. It was very internal, my Star Wars fandom. And I internalized it. And yes, there was Star Wars fans around me, in band in high school and stuff. And I remember, band. I remember going to one screening, some of my guy friends had a Star Wars viewing party. So I went to that. Yeah. And that was fun. But most of what I did with Star Wars was like just me. And so now it's interesting that my knowledge of all those stories and love of all those books has connected me with so many Star Wars fans now with the rise of social media. So I find that so intriguing.
It's beautiful. There's some, like you all were reading and internalizing your fandom for so long, and now you're able to find each other. And there's this whole huge depth of shared knowledge and shared love that you can share now in real life, which is really amazing.
Yeah. And I didn't even go into like, there was these fan fiction circles, you know, fanfic writers and things like my friend Trisha Barr, our friend Trisha Barr. But she was in that. And, you know, there's all of that too. But I never got into that. But one thing I did get to do was at Star Wars Celebration Orlando, 2017. I got to chat with Timothy Zahn, the author, for 15 minutes at a party. And
wow.
It was amazing. And unfortunately, it wasn't recorded. This was just an impromptu, like, I saw him, and we just started chatting, and I got to ask him how to pronounce some of these troublesome names in the Thrawn trilogy. Like,
that's great.
Like Luke Skywalker, who's like a clone of Luke, and the Salamari, they're spelled E-Salamari, like Y-S. It's very odd. Anyway, he has some weird spellings in there. So I was like, how do you do this? Anyway, but
that's cool.
If you want to hear like a fresh account of that, I would definitely check out episode 165 of Skywalking Through Neverland, where we kind of do this Celebration Orlando debriefing. And I talk all about that with a fresh memory. So
cool. I must have listened way back when you first published it, but I just forgot.
Oh yeah, not a problem.
Was he like stoked to talk about it?
Yeah, he was like totally just very chill. He was a very chill guy, kind of an older man, you know, at this point. And he just seemed very, I would say chill is the right word. Like he was happy to talk to anybody and anything about it. We stood for about 15 minutes in this room. Like we were going through to find like a bathroom or something, and he was coming the other direction. I was like, that's Timothy's on. And so we just started talking, and we just stood there talking for 15 minutes. So cool. Yeah.
I love it.
I loved it. So yeah, that's my Heir to the Empire story. And yeah,
it's a good one. Yay.
Now, what about you? What about your book?
My third book is called Still Life with Woodpecker by Tom Robbins. I'm going to read what the back of the book says about itself, because it's sort of hard to describe. So anyway, I'm going to just read what they wrote. Still Life with Woodpecker is a sort of a love story that takes place inside a pack of Camel cigarettes. It reveals the purpose of the moon, explains the difference between criminals and outlaws, examines the conflict between social activism and romantic individualism, and paints a portrait of contemporary society that includes powerful Arabs, exiled royalty, and pregnant cheerleaders. It also deals with the problem of redheads.
Oh my, well, I can see why you liked this. Miss Redhead.
Oh my goodness. So,
okay, when did you read this in your life? I'm so curious about this.
That's part of the story. So this was after I'd graduated from college, and I was trying to find my path in the world, and I didn't have a job, and I temped at a lot of offices all over Orange County.
Nice.
So a lot of my temp jobs, not a lot, but occasionally I would get these temp jobs where the temp agency would say something like, we are moving offices or something, this place is closing and they're moving everything to a new place, and they just need someone to sit in the empty office. You'll have a desk and a chair and a phone, and you'll be by yourself, but no one's going to come in or out. We need you to do that for a week.
Oh my
just to
God.
And answer the phone
please.
If it happened, right? And this was in the mid 90s. If someone calls, answer it. Take a message on the like little
pad
that has the multiple copies thing. And then someone will call you at the end of the day and you can read the messages to them. But otherwise, you can bring a book. You can just hang out. Bring your lunch because we can't let you stay because you don't have a key to the thing. Okay. So I read a lot of books it probably only happened like 3 or 4 times, and maybe it wasn't a week every time. But anyway, I had a lot of time, didn't have much direction, and loved books. I have no idea how I found this one. I don't remember. It's the first Tom Robbins book I ever read. The main characters are an exiled princess who's sort of like a liberal hippie, and she's very pretty and she's young, and a libertarian anarchist guy who is also a terrorist and blows stuff up.
Wow.
And they're both redheads. I haven't read the book in a long time. But what's weird is that when you said, hey, let's pick our, 3 books that shaped us over our lives, this one popped into my head. And it's not like something that I've read multiple times. I read it once. Maybe I read it 1.5 times. But it made a really big impression on me. So one of the problems is that because it's been so long since I read it, I don't have all the details in my brain. But basically, the princess, her name is Lee Cherie. She is in Hawaii at a convention for environmental activists and people who care about the environment.
Okay.
And she's obsessed with Ralph Nader, and I'll put in the show notes a link so you can learn who Ralph Nader is. But he was basically a consumer activist, sort of, who helped get our government to test things and publish reports on the safety of products.
Okay.
In a very small nutshell. She's obsessed with him. She's there to see him speak. Somehow she doesn't get to the speech, I don't think. And she gets diverted because the other main character, I forget his name, but he's the anarchist. He blows something up.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. He's the terrorist.
Correct.
Got it.
Anyway, they meet and sort of fall in love, and they're very different people. And it's a wild, wacky novel. And I didn't want to choose it. Once I immediately thought of it, I was like, wow, really, Still Life with Woodpecker really sort of formed me, at least earlier.
Okay.
But then immediately I was embarrassed by it because it's a fun novel. It's written by a man who is very funny and kind of cavalier about things. There's problematic stuff in it from female, like the descriptions of female. It's basically, it's written for like a 14-year-old boy.
Oh, wow. And yet it had a big impression on you.
Right. Because, it's not billed that way.
Right.
But it sort of has the sensibility of like a teenage boy.
Yeah, I can
bit.
see that. Okay.
But there's also some depth to it. I made the mistake of going to Goodreads to see what other people said about it. And immediately I thought, oh, you can't choose this as your book. Please don't talk about how you loved this book and how it formed you. But let's go back to my upbringing.
Okay.
Very sheltered, had not experienced the world much. And even through college, because it was still a fairly sheltered experience where I was. So this novel felt sort of dangerous and bold and funny and true to me when I was my naive sort of 21-year-old self.
Right.
So this is another one that sort of opened me up to a world or a thoughts that I had not grown up with.
A different worldview, basically.
Correct. And as I do, I was talking to my husband about it because I said, he said, what, did you choose your 3 books? And I said, yeah, but I want to do Still Life with Woodpecker, but I really don't want to. And I explained to him why. And he said, I think you should do it anyway because books or art or music that you experience and that shows you something you've never seen or known or understood before and allows you to imagine something that's possible that you can't imagine. That's so important.
That's kind of the point, I think.
Right. I really needed him to make me see that. He also said, you don't know how a book is impacting you while you're reading it.
Okay, yeah.
Generally, you have to get through it and get past and then sort of think about it and realize what it has done for or to you. And so this book is one of those for me. It's, and I realized it's okay to move on from a book that affected you deeply. like that's totally fine. So I don't have to ever read this again because it shaped me in a way that eventually allowed me to be who I am now.
That makes a lot of sense. And in fact, it's kind of like those movies you see as kids that like really made a big impression on you. And then you watch them again as an adult and you're like, why did I like this? Or, you know,
right.
It's
yeah.
the time of life that you experience this story that really has an effect. So
yeah.
I like that. So it opened up your worldview. Kind of similar to the other, to The Passion as well.
Correct. Yep.
Nice.
So I thank my husband's wisdom. I'm so grateful for it. And, so that's book 3.
Nice.
I do have an honorable mention though, because I was going back and forth between Still Life with Woodpecker and, the Moosewood Cookbook.
Oh my, what is this?
So the Moosewood Restaurant is a restaurant in like upstate New York, I think. It's a vegetarian restaurant, or it's mostly vegetarian. From like the 60s, 70s, 80s. It's probably still open. I don't even know. But Molly Katzen is the author. She worked there. I think she was one of the people who helped found the restaurant. She has written many, many cookbooks, but I think the first one she wrote was called the Moosewood Cookbook, and it's a vegetarian cookbook. I discovered it when I was probably 23. I was given it by a coworker at my first real job after college. I worked at a food bank in Los Angeles, and one of the people I worked with, he brought a dish to a potluck, and I said, oh, that was really good, and I don't even like cottage cheese. And he said, oh, I got it from this book, and he was like, I'll bring you a copy, I have an extra. So he gave it to me, and it really shaped my cooking because I had never really considered vegetarian cooking before. And that sort of launched me into a whole, like, this can be done, and it's easy and delicious. So, and that was in 1995 or 6.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a really good book. The thing about it is that she hand lettered all of the pages. Like all the recipes are her handwriting, and she drew pictures. She drew like pictures of things. It's really lovely. It's beautiful. And while it's a little bit outdated as a vegetarian cookbook now because we've come so far, but at the time, another thing opened me up to this thing that I had not been considering, and it changed my life.
That's so cool. Well, okay. What's interesting about this, I find it curious, the books that we chose and the time of life that we read them kind of shows like how our formative years. So, and cause people grow at different speeds, you know? So most of my books were like early teens that kind of shaped who I was, and most of yours are early 20s. So
yeah, I was a total late bloomer. I still am.
Okay. That's cool too. No, but I find that interesting. It is
interesting.
So like that's the years that kind of really shaped us.
Yep.
Our individuals. So anybody listening, let us know, you know, if you find that similarly too, when you're kind of thinking about your 3 books.
Yeah. I would love to hear people's take on all of their books and all of that.
So yeah, we'd really love to hear about your 3 books because I just find it a fascinating look back at our lives and our formative years. And so if you want to email us, you can email share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. Or if you want to DM us on Instagram, we are at Totally Tell Me Everything.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
We went with the whole shebang. Yes.
Right. Okay.
And if people email us with their books and why, then we also have a new reading list for
next time.
New books we could read. Yeah.
Oh, that too. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
New books.
It's always fun to get recommendations.
Definitely. Definitely. All right. So now.
Oh my gosh, we're just on question 2.
Right. But you know what? I think the majority of this one will be our 3 books. I mean, that was quite a hefty thing. So this time our history section will not be quite as big, but question 2, what do we want to learn about books?
Sarah, you get to go first because it's your birthday.
Okay. So I was very curious about the ways in which the printing press changed history, like changed society, basically. So, and in doing some research on this, I did learn something that I had previously not. So like I learned in high school that the printing press was developed by Johannes Gutenberg, that he was credited with inventing it around 1430 to 1450 in there. And that's what I learned in my European history, right?
Yep. That's what we all were taught.
Exactly.
For so long.
Well, wrong.
Yes.
Wrong. So when I was researching this, so originally the first printing press was kind of in the 1st through 9th century in China with woodblock printing. So they would actually cut a specific wood block for one project and carve out what they needed to then put ink on the wood and then, press it onto something. But this, of course, was not movable type. So, you carve one thing, it took so long, and you press it and you're done. And then, now you have to carve something else if you want to do anything else. Right? So then metal type printing began in Korea actually about 150 years before Johannes Gutenberg printing press. And that began in the 1300s. And the first book ever printed this way is, and this is an English paraphrase, of course, because I can't read the other title, but it's The Anthology of Great Buddhist Priests' Zen Teachings in 1377.
Very cool.
Yeah. And one of these printings, or at least pieces of it, is preserved today in the National Library of France. So I found that
right on.
Very intriguing. So we have to give credit to China and Korea, because they were first.
Heck yeah. Right on.
Yeah. I just can't believe like our history didn't teach us that, but well, I guess I can't believe it.
It's sort of, easy to believe actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but now that we know better, we do better.
Exactly. So, but the reason that the Gutenberg printing press kind of caught on was because he did make some modifications to like the printing press of the Korea or China, because for one thing, he produced each letter on its own block, in metal, and he produced it in a large scale. So he had a bunch of these letters ready to go. And he did it in metal because wood would soak up too much ink. If you think about it, it's a whatever kind of porous substance, right?
Yeah.
And also Gutenberg developed a special ink that stuck to metal. So, isn't that cool? Like normal ink wouldn't have worked. It would be splotchy. And so he had to develop his own ink. And then also he repurposed wine and olive presses to perfectly flatten paper before printing.
Oh, very cool.
I thought that was very interesting. So he would get this uniform print with the handle for the wine and the olive presses and it would apply this uniform downward pressure on the paper. So
that makes a lot of sense. Anybody who's ever tried to stamp things.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Makes a big difference.
It does. So that was kind of the big invention here. And the first thing he ever published was the Bible. And he published about 150 to 200 copies, and it took him like 2 years to produce those, which is crazy to me.
Oh, like one at a time?
Well, I would assume he'd print each page, but the Bible is like 2,000 pages. It's like ridiculously long, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's only like a handful of these copies that still exist, but if you can get your hands on one, wow. That's pretty amazing. So I found all that super intriguing. But now I want to get into how this press, this printing press, at least in Europe, changed society. And for one thing, a global news network was created. So like these stuff would be printed on leaflets, like news of what was happening, and ships that left Venice would carry these pamphlets and along with religious texts and literature, but they would carry these pamphlets across the world. And so the printers in Venice would sell these 4-page news pamphlets to sailors. And then when these ships arrived at their distant ports, local printers would actually copy these pamphlets and hand them off to writers who would race them off to dozens of towns.
Oh.
It's a far cry from the internet, but
far cry, but it's where it started. That's very interesting.
So news would get around the world. And I also found it interesting. Oh, this is another thing. So before the printing press, books were hand copied and they would be so expensive. So only the very rich would have like libraries, very, very rich, and like one hand-copied book in the 14th century would cost as much as a house, which
Oh my goodness.
is crazy pants, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So with the advent of the printing press, you could buy books cheaper, not quite cheap, but like they were actually available to more of the class, more of the middle class. And it kind of accelerated the rediscovery and sharing of knowledge. So, then this emerging middle class could actually be as well read as the upper class if they wanted to.
Yeah, leveling the playing field more.
Exactly. And this is another big point that brings me to is that previously silenced voices can be heard. There's this historian, Ada Palmer, and I read an article that he mentions whenever a new information technology comes along, and this includes the printing press, among the very first groups to be loud in it are the people who were silenced in the earlier system, which means radical voices. So these people are more willing to take the risks and make the effort to be early adopters of these new forms of, information sharing that had no voice before this technology existed.
That makes so much sense.
It does, which also leads to revolution.
Yes.
So Martin Luther, who is the head of the Protestant Revolution, became the first best-selling author.
Wow.
Yeah. In 1518 to 1525, all of his writings accounted for like a third of all books sold in Germany at that point in time, which I found fascinating.
Can you imagine if one writer had a third of the market right now?
Yeah.
That would be
insane.
Wild.
Yeah. And he led the Protestant Revolution there. Yeah. Oh, right. I said that already. But yeah. He like famously nailed the 95 Theses to the church door,
Yes, he did.
Like, this is, the church should change. So yeah. Thought that was interesting. And then similarly, the scientific revolution benefited from printing because previously scientists would write down all their findings and, not everyone has legible handwriting, right?
Yes.
And
especially now too. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Everybody's handwriting has gotten so bad since we typed so much.
Exactly. So yeah. So now that you can print formulas and mathematical tables and scientific findings, the accuracy is already determined. So scientists could trust this accuracy and then devote more energy to breaking new ground. So I thought that was interesting. And so the scientific revolution really made great leaps forward in the 16th and 17th centuries.
Fascinating.
All because of the printing press.
Yeah. Standardize things and then you can spread it easier.
Mm-hmm. But I really found it fascinating about that whole giving voice to people who were formerly silenced. And Twitter.
Yes.
Yep. Any kind of social media, like early adopters, like that. Yeah. Anybody's voices can be heard for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's true.
We can all be heard if we want to. So yeah.
So interesting. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
So you went with the history and I was interested in what's the future of books?
Wow.
Or possibly also what's the now of books?
This is why we work together very well. Because we're so interested in the different things, but it helps expand.
And we don't talk about it ahead of time. We're not like going, okay, you go this way, I'll go that way. It's just happening naturally. I love it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like once ebooks came on the scene, people were all, oh, what's going to happen to books? And oh, it's going to ruin books. And I don't have the whole story. That's the other thing I wish I had said at the very beginning of all of these episodes is, we're not experts.
Oh, no.
We're just doing research on things we're interested in and giving you what we found. So there's lots more to all of this and it's possible we'll get things wrong. So I was curious about the success of paper books and the success of electronic books.
Especially right now, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the future.
Oh, I'm excited about this.
Because, everyone was all up in arms about ebooks and they're going to ruin paper books and whatever. Audiobooks also.
Right. For the record, I was not up in arms. I was like, give me an iPad and have my whole library on here. I'm cool.
That's good. Yeah. I've actually used a Kindle and I've used paper books recently and I like both of them. I'm starting to like paper books again a little bit more. But anyway, that's totally another tangent. So I found some book statistics on a website called Statista. It's a German company, and they have all kinds of statistics about books from all over the world.
Okay.
What I will say that I learned is that print book sales, so paper books, their figures have improved over the last 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And this was as of November 10th, 2020. So not that long ago.
Okay.
Unit sales of paper books are more than 650 million per year. So more than 650 million paper books are sold per year all over the world. It's the most popular book format in the US.
Oh, wow.
Paper books still. Yeah. More than 65% of adults will admit to having read a print book in the last 12 months. So one book in a year, but they're probably reading ebooks too.
Okay.
And listening to audiobooks. So print books are not dead. They're up. They actually sell better than ebooks in the United States, which I was somehow grateful for. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Is it because I'm steeped in the old school?
Well, I think it kind of makes sense because if you look at it compare this to films, what is that called? Special effects in films, right? There was the digital effects craze and people were like, yes, must be digital. And now all the practical effects are coming back after about a 10, 15 year hiatus. So I think it's similar with books. There was the ebook craze and I don't know how statistics were when ebooks first came out, but
me neither.
Yeah. But I assume because print book sales have improved over the last 5 years, that kind of seems like a similar trend. It's like people are like, oh, let's go back to the old school.
It makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Not to say that ebooks are doing badly. I don't think they are, but
right.
Also audiobooks. So in 2019, more than $1 billion in audiobook sales happened. So audiobooks are very popular. Yeah. Publishers Weekly reported that print book sales rose 8.2% in 2020. So from 2019 to 2020, print book sales were up 8.2%.
That's a pretty big number.
It is. We read a lot of print book sales during the first year of COVID.
Okay.
The other thing that which spurred my curiosity in the future of books and the now of books is a documentary that I watched called The Booksellers, which is a sort of behind the scenes film about rare book business, which I didn't really have an interest in, but the film was really well done. So it was very interesting. It's about rare booksellers, but also about the future of books too. So I highly recommend The Booksellers. One of the executive producers is Parker Posey, the actress.
Yeah.
Who I love. And who one of her first breakout roles, I believe, was Party Girl. Did you ever see Party Girl?
No, I didn't.
It's good. It's fun. She plays a young woman who lives in New York City. I think it was in the 90s, early-ish 90s. And she holds raves sort of in her apartment and she's like a party girl. And then something happens. I forget what it is. Something big in her life happens and she becomes in contact with her aunt who's a librarian.
Okay.
And she ends up having to spend a lot of time with her aunt and she discovers that she wants to be a librarian. So she's this cool, kind of weird party girl who a dancey party girl who wants to be a librarian and is. And it's actually a really fun movie. Nice. Anyway, I wonder if that sort of spurred her interest in helping to make a documentary about books.
So I'm actually in the middle of this documentary, The Booksellers.
And cool.
Yeah, because you had recommended it and I just didn't get a chance to finish. But it is very interesting. It's mostly set in New York. And the way these people talk about books is fascinating, actually. It's this love of the physical object that, and I mean, these books are much older than us. It's fascinating how they've stood the test of time.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. There's something about the smell of books too.
Yeah.
Walking into used bookstores or a library, the smell of a library is pretty great.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, on to question 3. Sarah, what are you excited about regarding books?
Well, it's funny. We had just talked about audiobooks and print books versus online or ebooks because I'm excited about audiobooks.
Yay!
Just in general, I love the fact that I can be making dinner or washing dishes or cleaning and still be engrossed in a novel. Like, I think that's awesome.
It's amazing.
So, and in fact, you know what? I've only tried like Whisper Sync one time where you do like the audio book and then you can read it like at certain times. It's like this Whisper Sync mode of Audible.
I don't know. I know nothing of this.
Okay. It's between Audible and Kindle. So it's all, an Amazon thing, and you buy the book, both forms, I think, and it's a little more expensive, but at any given moment you can either listen or you can read, and it like syncs it, just like it says, it whisper sync. So like, yeah.
Okay, wait, I think I need more of an explanation.
Okay.
So you can either listen or you can read, but can you have it read to you while you're looking at the book too? That's what I thought you were saying.
Oh, no. So what I'm saying is, let's say I'm cooking dinner and I'm listening to chapter 1 of this Loki book that I'm listening to. Okay.
Ooh,
so
Loki.
It's a YA novel about Loki. Ooh. Yeah. Right. So I could be listening to chapter 1. I'm cooking dinner. Chapter 1 finishes and we eat dinner, and then I'm in bed at night and I want to read. Right. So then I pick up and I go to the Kindle version and it like syncs to chapter 2, like immediately.
That is very cool. That is one of the big problems I have with ebooks. Has nothing to do with the audiobook, but with ebooks is that I find it very hard to like scan through and find if I want to go back to a place that I liked or, like first of all, it's probably user error because I'm not that savvy about how the stupid thing even works. And I know you can
bookmark stuff.
Okay. So I don't know how to do the bookmarks. And I don't care to list to learn.
Wow. Cranky old Bryn coming out.
Totally. Totally. Bryn is cranky every day. So maybe I should take a moment to, maybe I will take a moment to learn how to bookmark things in ebooks. But that is one of the reasons I love print books, is because I can just flip, and there it is.
Well, the fact that you like to write in books, I think that's why you like the print books.
And it's funny. I don't really write in books anymore, but I definitely did when I was younger, especially, for class. But then even a few years after that, I was still, jotting.
Oh, that makes sense. So that was my general, I'm excited about, but I am also, I just want to mention that, in fact, I want to put it out to all of you listeners. I am really into Marvel fandom right now. I'm want to just sink my teeth into it even more because I want to promote it and support it because Marvel is doing everything right. So I would love to get into some Marvel books and would love some suggestions of where to begin. I did start an audiobook. There's this YA series of 3 Loki novels that's written by a woman, and I'm listening to that right now. So that's pretty cool. But I also wouldn't mind some books in between Infinity War and Endgame or just, I don't even know, if there's a really good, series of novels to just sink into. I would love suggestions.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I definitely need to look into that YA Loki series because Loki is my jam.
The first book is called Loki, Where Mischief Lies. And it's kind of about him as a teenager and then a young adult, probably early 20s, although, they're infinite beings, so you never really know how old they are.
Right. That is funny. They have to sort of fudge that, but whatever.
But it's really interesting because he feels magic in his bones or in his veins, and he feels this from a young age. So it's about him kind of learning how to use his magic and forming and all his emo stuff with Thor, and how Thor is the golden child and he's the runt, or, stuff like that. So it's really, it's good. I recommend it so far.
Cool. I will have to check that out.
Yeah.
I really like Loki. I can't decide if I like Loki because I like Tom Hiddleston.
Right.
Or if I like Loki for Loki, but that's okay.
That's okay. I think I just love Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of him. I am not so into Tom Hiddleston, as a, attracted to, but I just love how he portrays him, and he just chews up the scenery as Loki. Yeah. And I think that it's awesome. So
Yeah, I agree. He does a great job at it. I like him as an actor in other things as well, though. So.
Oh, perfect. But can I mention one more thing?
Of course. I mentioned way more things, so yes, please do.
True.
Don't make me the hog.
It's my birthday. I'm going to mention it. Okay. I'm going to mention the International Printing Museum. Now, this is in Carson, California. You can actually go to this museum, although not right now because of COVID, but you can go and you can see actual printing presses from like the 1850s on up to today and like how they did the different printing and get examples of the printing. And it's fascinating to see this movable type at work. And you take a whole tour. And I did this as a student. I went there and I actually got this like metal movable type, and you can get it like imprinted, like you pick your letters and then they like solder it together in this like metal strip as to what it would actually look like if that type was, you used it to print. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Sarah's showing it to me right now and it looks so cool. What does it say? It's hard for me to tell backwards.
So it's backward. Oh, now it's forwards for you, right?
No, it's backwards for
me.
Okay.
Still. Well, it says Richard and Sarah Woloski because at that point I had just got married.
I love it. That's so awesome. Have you ever used it? Like, have you ever put ink on it and stamped with it in some way?
I have not. It's just sat on my desk all this time.
That's okay. It's really cool. I love that you still have it.
And it's pretty heavy too. It's like hefty. It's this chunk of metal that's really thin and long because it's like one row of movable type. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So, but the museum is really cool because, yeah, again, you can take a guided tour and they tell you about each of these machines and show you how they work. And I have video somewhere, I think. I don't know where that went, but if I find it, I'll post it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, yeah.
I have also been to the International Printing Museum.
Oh, yay. Okay,
yeah,
I didn't know.
It's a thing. Yeah, it's a thing that my family and I have done multiple times. We go to the Printers Fair, which happens every year. I forget what time of year. It feels hot, so it must be maybe summertime. And it's great. I remember always being like sweaty.
Yes,
because
it is hot in there.
Outside. Mm-hmm. And it's partially outside too. They have all sorts of booths set up. Did you go during a Printers Fair or was it just a tour?
No, it was a class tour. We took it as a class.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So during the Printers Fair, they have all sorts of booths set up in the sort of back, like there's like a parking lot-y area between the main building and the back building where a lot of the other actual printing stuff happens. Wow. But they have a big parking lot and they set up all these booths. And so vendors are there, people selling artwork and all sorts of crafty things that have to do with books and printing and paper crafts. And it's lovely. And you can it's not really a tour, but they periodically throughout the day, it's a multiple day fair. Periodically throughout the day, they'll have someone talk you through the printing press that's there, I think it's a Gutenberg press. I'm pretty sure or it's like the Gutenberg press if it's not an actual.
It's gigantic though.
It's huge. And they pick like one person, usually a kid, and who gets to like help make a print or whatever. But then in the back, they have a place where you can do prints too. And it's just really fun. We have a friend, he repaired typewriters, like vintage typewriters. Oh. And he had a booth there too. So you could go and buy a really cool vintage typewriter. All sorts of different stuff. It's a great place. It's really fun. They do a winter time, like a Christmas Carol reading or something.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Yeah, which we never did, but maybe someday.
Maybe this year. Crossing
maybe
fingers,
this year.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Yep.
That would be amazing.
I love it.
So, Bryn, what are something you're excited about? Books.
Oh, I am excited about reading again.
Oh. Have you not been reading?
Not so much. I was an English major. I think I said that earlier. I'm an English major who lost her way.
Oh.
So that's why I was sort of really grateful we chose this topic because I was a reader. I forgot that fact for a while because for like 15 years, my priorities have been different.
Well, yeah, you have kids.
Yeah. And so those other priorities have taken the spotlight that reading used to for me. Mm-hmm. Like I majored in books, right?
Yeah.
But while having to think about the books I have loved to prepare for this and the books that have affected me and how they made me feel, it was sort of like a thunderclap in my heart.
Aww.
That it reminded me like, dude, you like books. Get back to that. Even like taking care of my kids and even when they were little, I still was reading every day, but it wasn't reading for me.
Right.
So I have started reading for myself the last couple of years, here and there, which is good. Star Wars books. Actually, I started reading Star Wars books because you always have talked about Star Wars books and how much you like them and how they are such a big part of your fandom or were as well. So I gave a couple of them a chance and I've really liked the ones that I've read. So that really helped kind of like be a low stress way back into reading, you know?
Right.
I'm not tackling some big hard book or something like, which is something I would have been doing a lot as a English major and post college.
Like For Whom the Bell Tolls or something.
Right. I'm not just going to pick up War and Peace after 15 years of, you know, Dr. Seuss.
Right. Did you read to your kids? I'm curious.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Okay.
a lot. I still read to the younger one.
Oh, nice.
I really like reading out loud and I like sharing books with them. That's fun.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I like to read out loud. And actually, I don't know if anyone would be interested, but I recorded the chapters of Little House in the Big Woods because there were some kids who couldn't always attend last year when I was reading it for his classroom. So I actually have YouTube videos, not of me, but of the book. If anybody wants me to read them, Little House in the Big Woods.
Wow. Well, should we link those in our show notes? I'm very curious.
Maybe. I might decide no. So, but yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
Well, it could be a surprise for you guys. So check out the show notes at skywalkingnetwork.com.
Will she or won't she? You'll have to look at the notes to find out.
Indeed.
But so getting back to, you know, I picked it back up, realized that reading books is self-care.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many things that have to get done during the day and there's so many responsibilities. Taking the time to sit down and read a book for me is a big deal and is a way to give myself love, right?
Yeah.
And so because kids benefit from parents practicing self-care, and it's important for kids to see their parents reading their own books, I can give myself self-care and help the fam. So it's a win-win, even if maybe other things don't get done during that time. But that's okay. Anyway, so I'm excited about reading again.
I like that. And it reminds me kind of like our lipstick episode when you talked about how your kids see you kind of playing with makeup and are drawn to that. So
Yeah.
I think they're drawn to you taking care of yourself, which is important.
Yes, it's important. So I'm excited to become a reader of books again.
That sounds okay. And that also reminded me how you're talking about how you kind of lost your way, but then is finding your way back. You know, Inside Out, the film.
Yes.
Where in her mind, she has these islands of her things, her like hockey was an island or, something else and like how the island started deteriorating when she didn't use that skill. So I feel like maybe your island was a little black and white and now it's getting its color again, right?
Absolutely. I love that visual. Thank you for bringing that up. It's a beautiful way to think of those things. They did a really good job with that movie.
Yeah, I agree. And I have similar islands, you know, like soccer was a big island and now it's not so much, but now it's becoming water volleyball, which is like a thing I'm doing a lot. So, you know,
I love that. Yeah.
It's real interesting how our interests fade and change or, fade and maybe come back. So yeah,
It's beautiful.
hopeful. All right. Well, you guys, so the past 2 episodes that we recorded was before we had put out any podcasts. And so this time we're recording after we've posted both of the podcast episodes, Lipstick and Space. And so we have some stuff to share from you guys.
You've been listening a little bit.
You've been listening and talking to us.
Which we love. We're so happy. So happy to get feedback.
Yeah, so we have a new section, a new feedback section. And what do you think about the title, Totally Talk to Us?
I like it. Yay. Do it. Talk to us. Totally do it.
Okay. So let's see, Bryn, do you want to go back and forth and read some of these comments from our listeners?
Sure.
Let's see. This is from @IamStarWarsTime on Instagram. And they say, he says, I think you two make a great team. You guys work off each other really well and make the topics you are talking about very interesting, and you guys just make it fun. I mean, I'm a man's man, and I thought the lipstick episode was very intriguing. Keep up the great work and can't wait for more.
Thank you. I am Star Wars Time.
Yeah.
It's so nice to have the episodes out and to know that people are listening.
Yes.
And I've gotten this similar sentiment from some of the men in my life who know me personally and who have listened, where they are like, I don't care about lipstick, but I really liked the episode and I learned a lot and that feels so good. So thank you for validating that from someone who doesn't know me. I am Star Wars Time. Stoked to have you. Stoked to have you as a listener.
Definitely. Do you want to read the next one?
Yeah. Okay. This is from Peter Heitman.
That's my dad.
Sarah's dad. And I think this is on Facebook.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Peter says, found Space episode really amazing, entertaining, and informative. Like their previous episode on the cultural and personal evolution of lipstick, this one treats the broad topic of space with the same depth and enthusiasm. It's a friendly chat that will lift your spirit and have you looking forward to their next episodes. I love that.
I know. It's like, can he write our byline?
Right. He's so thoughtful in his writing and he really thinks about it and expresses himself so well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Oh, I definitely wanted him to listen to the space episode because I had that whole fun story about him helping me with my science project.
Yeah. He's in it and he listens. I love it.
Yes. All right. And here @Katie and Clark, and this is a friend of yours, right, Bryn?
Yeah. She's my real life friend.
She wrote on Instagram, refreshing morning walk along the shore with my trusty sidekick, which is her puppy.
Her dog. Yeah.
Harboring a renewed appreciation for red lipstick because of my amazing chum Bryn and her new podcast, Totally Tell Me Everything. You totally have to hear it.
Yay. Thank you, Katie. Really appreciate it. And you looked great in your lipstick.
Yes.
And her dog is recuperating from some surgery and she's doing well. So I'm glad that the Lady Sussman is improving.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, as he said, you can shout us out on social media and maybe we'll read your comments on the next episode. And we definitely want to know, like, which books have affected you. So once again, make sure you either post on Instagram. We are at Totally Tell Me Everything. Or you can email share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com. And that is share, SHARE, and we will both see those messages. Thank you everyone for listening. And if you want to reach out, we are on Instagram. I am at JediTink. Bryn is at Brynane. And you can also find us in the Skywalking Through Neverland Facebook group. So just search Facebook for Skywalking Through Neverland group and request to join. And then answer the questions that pop up. And yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that.
We are part of the Skywalking Network.
Skynet.
Where you can also find other great shows like Skywalking Through Neverland,
The Neverland Clubhouse,
the Max Effects Podcast,
Resilience Squadron,
Sabers and Spells,
and Talking Apes. And don't forget to sign up for the Skywalking Network newsletter. A link to that will be in our show notes because every week you'll receive news of what's happening on the Skywalking Network, like when we release a podcast episode or when some of the other podcast episodes come out, and also some interesting articles that we post on the network including like just past week, Eric Unkenhout had posted an article about Wanda and Vision and all the comics that maybe you can delve into if you're into the show. And they're kind of like some origin stories. So he did a really good comprehensive list.
So come sit by us next month when we'll totally tell you everything about tea. The drink. You know, you drink it.
It's like, what? The letter T. Now
Tea?
we've become...
Hot tea. Iced tea. Those kinds of things. Come back. Come sit by us and we'll talk.
T. Oh, gray, hot.
Hi, I have a husband walking through the bedroom. We need to pause for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, Sarah, what's your third book?
Okay, so my third book. Where's my notes? Where'd it go? Oh, here it is.
This is very unscientific.
Nowhere. Okay, no
I'm
worries.
just throwing things out that I saw.
Okay, I'm just looking at the show notes and I read them wrong, so I apologize.
Oh, got it. Well, my show notes on this are not great. So
Don't admit that. Shh. No, I'm just kidding.
I have excellent show notes. No, this is my recording notes are not great. The show notes will be pristine.
Got it. Yay.
I love it too. Yay.
Okay. Well, awesome.
Bye. Oh, blah.
Oh, I think we're done. We already
Okay,
did
good.
it. Yeah.
Cool.